BitSwap is the hottest new way to trade tokens. Crawling all the top decentralized exchanges, BitSwap will get you the very best price and value for your trades. BitSwap is changing the game. Try it now at bitswapdex.com.
Welcome to Rice TVX and the latest episode of the Rice Crypto Show. Today's guest is Reggie Middleton, who is the founder and CEO of Veritaseum. He is also the inventor of Decentralized Finance. Reggie was granted utility patents in Japan in October of 2020 and the United States in December of 2021. Today's episode is all about the aboriginal DeFi or peer-to-peer capital markets patent. Now be sure to check out the episode of Rice Rewind, which was my first interview with Reggie Middleton that took place in September of 2018 when I was a contributor with World Alternative Media. Before we get into it, make sure you visit ricetvx.com and sign up for my mailing list so you never miss an update or new Rice TVX content. Plus, you can find my social media links, contact information, get Rice TVX merch coming soon via the shop, and more. If this is your first time ever watching any of my videos, check out and explore my channels. Make sure you subscribe to Rice TVX and Rice TVX2, both can be found on YouTube, and hit the notification bell to get alerted to new videos. Also, you can follow me on Odyssey and Library, where I have my full catalog of videos plus extra content. And you can also find Rice TVX on BitChute. If you want to support Rice TVX and what I do directly, I have my PayPal, Cash App, plus my cryptocurrency addresses via my Cointree link below in the video description. You can also join my Patreon channel where you will get early access to some of my videos, exclusive content, and more, with 4 different levels of membership, all offering something different. If you are looking to purchase and invest in precious metals, gold and silver are both good safe haven assets to hedge against the financial collapse we are experiencing. Check out Money Metals Exchange. I partnered up with them and you can get a free ½ ounce of silver. Visit moneymetals.com, be a first-time buyer, purchase a minimum of $100, and use the promo code RICE. You get a free ½ ounce of silver, and it's another way to support the channel. I will include links down below for everything I just mentioned, as well as everything I talk about on today's show. All right, ladies and gentlemen, joining me on today's show is Reggie Middleton. He is the founder and CEO of Veritaseum. He is also now the inventor of Decentralized Finance. He was awarded the patent for DeFi. It's an aboriginal DeFi patent, which we'll get into in today's conversation, by the United States and Japanese patent offices. Reggie, I appreciate you accepting my invitation to come on today. How are you?
I am fine. It's my pleasure to be on.
Thank you again. And this is actually my second interview with you, but it's your first time on Rice TVX. The first time I interviewed you was a couple of years back when I was a contributor for World Alternative Media. And I'm actually going to re-release that interview as a Rice Rewind the same day I'm releasing this interview. So we're recording it on the 10th of January, and I'm probably going to be releasing it Wednesday or Thursday. But I'll give you a heads up when I release it.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, so I want to do a quick screen share because I've got some information. I've been doing a little bit of research in regards to international patent law. But you have a tweet that took place on December the 7th that you're proud to announce the world's largest economy joins Japan, the 3rd largest, in granting Reggie Middleton the most significant patent in the blockchain industry, the aboriginal DeFi patent for swaps, asset tokens, side chains, and much more. So do you mind kind of giving a brief overview of what this is that you were granted? Because I know you filed for this May 9th, 2014. So this isn't a new thing. And you were granted the patent in Japan first on October 16th, 2020. And then most recently in the United States, December the 7th, which is the same day that you made this tweet. So the original name of the patent, and I'll include all the information, is devices, systems, and methods for facilitating low trust and zero trust value transfers. So how did all this come about, Reggie?
Well, there's a long story, but I'm going to give you the TLDR version. I'm a finance guy. I dabbled in Bitcoin initially, and I was amazed by what I saw. I think because I approached it from a financial perspective versus a development, IT perspective, or a software development perspective, I saw something different. I saw conditional value transfer, swaps, derivatives, commodity exchanges, etc., where everybody else saw money remittances or token prices going up and down. And so we started building a super Bitcoin wallet, basically a Bitcoin wallet that not just sent Bitcoin back and forth, but allowed you to tie the Bitcoin to the price of anything with a data feed, and the Bitcoin would adjust in price. And eventually that will morph into sending other assets besides Bitcoin, again, according to a data feed. And we patented it or applied for patent protection actually in April, and then applied again in May. And this was back in 2014. And it took quite a while for the patents to be awarded and granted. We have plenty more in the pipeline. And that's where it came from. The patent covers, in layman's terms, semi-layman, the conditional transfer of value without the need to rely on authoritative middlemen and without without counterparty risk or low counterparty risk. So basically, breaking it down even further, I can send something to you that is a more complex transaction than just sending Bitcoin A to Bitcoin B. I could send Bitcoin A to you contingent upon a New Zealand dollar value or US dollar value or gold or IBM stock. Or I could send something more complex, such as title to land. And all this is contingent upon whatever other data source says that we agree upon. So it's a very, very powerful patent. If you look at that as a component, almost all the products built upon the blockchain over the last 3 or 4 years basically entail that. You just have to be able to take a step or two back to see the forest and don't let the tree bark block your vision.
That makes sense. And I was trying to look up what aboriginal patent meant, and I didn't see anything in international patent law for aboriginal patent, because I know a lot of people are going to say, well, if I was to go over and read the entirety of this patent and everything that's in it, there's no mention of decentralized finance. So how can you be the inventor of decentralized finance? How would you explain to somebody when they're saying there's no DeFi in that, Reggie?
Well, I wouldn't agree with the premise. If you read the patent, it does explain it in extreme detail. If it doesn't say the word decentralized finance, I'm not claiming a trademark to decentralized finance. I could claim a trademark to distributed finance, but I'm not going to play the word games of semantics. The patent goes into significant and extreme and granular detail on how to conduct simplistic and advanced and very advanced financial transactions on a distributed or decentralized basis. And that's what the entire patent's about.
Right. And you, Ron, I'm going to include links for the interview that you did with CryptoBlood from CBTV, but you also made an appearance on one of the Off the Chain episodes, which I'll include as well, where we kind of had a pretty interesting discussion when it comes to this, because there's some people that feel that these ideas existed prior to you patenting them. And how can you patent them if they existed prior? People were trying to use the Ethereum argument, which Ethereum wasn't even created till July 30th of 2015. And then to even back up what you said, if people were to go to your YouTube channel, they'll see that in 2014, May of 2014, you were on Max Kaiser's show, Kaiser Report on RT, talking about filing this very patent. This is the same patent that you were awarded and granted that you're talking about with Max in this particular interview?
Yes, it is.
So this just goes to show people like how forward thinking you were. But when someone's trying to use the argument that these concepts existed before you came up with them, or that before you patented the idea, how would you respond to that?
Well, let's look at it from a critical review perspective. when someone is presented with information that they weren't aware of before, if you are objective, you would inquire and ask for more. If you want to counter it, fight it, attack it, or struggle against it, that goes to show that you're probably not that objective. So the fact that everybody wants to disprove that the patent is valid or disprove that I'm not first shows that there's a bias on agenda there from the get-go. When Vitalik Buterin, who's actually younger than my son, one of my sons, when he says I invented Ethereum, I don't recall everybody saying, well, he didn't really invent Ethereum and this predated that, et cetera, et cetera. It wasn't really relevant. They said, wow, that was an interesting invention. Let's learn more about it. So if someone doesn't have a no or a neutral response to it, and that response is negative, I automatically assume agenda because you're not looking for more, you're looking to disprove something. If you are going to attempt to disprove it, you have to at least know what you're disproving. Most of the arguments I've seen on social media attempting to debunk the patent, they haven't even read the patent. So if you haven't read the patent and understood it, you don't really have a base to argue from. And if you're trying to argue from it from the beginning, from the very beginning, you have an agenda or ulterior motive. Everybody does, but if it's not realized that there's an agenda or ulterior motive being presented, then I think it colors the entire discussion. So to answer the original question, this idea was pretty unique from my perspective. I came up with it in 2013 and developed it. I was the first one to develop actual software that did advanced financial transactions such as this on a blockchain, on a Bitcoin blockchain. This is way before Ethereum was released or even written. It was conceptualized earlier, but even with the conceptualization of Ethereum, doesn't come close to what we've invented. Now, the stuff that was built on top of Ethereum comes close, but that's 5, 6, 7 years later. Or some of the improvement proposals that have been adopted by Ethereum comes close. But again, this patent was filed years before then.
Right. And even during that same time period and a couple years before, you were talking very publicly about the idea of creating peer-to-peer capital markets, getting rid of the middleman and having this directly from person to person, which henceforth the peer-to-peer, which, obviously was definitely forward thinking. And when I look into the ideas of patent law, it's, and I'll include links down below for this, because this is one thing I will say, and I told you when we talked about this, Reggie, I'm not an expert. I'm not even really super knowledgeable when it comes to patent law. But
don't trust me. That's why a lot of the proclamations and the assent and dissent and, everybody's an instant international property law professional overnight. So I'm glad you're honest enough to admit your limitations.
No problem. And I appreciate you saying that. What type of patent is it? They talk about 3 distinct patents: a utility patent, a design patent, and a plant patent.
Utility.
It's a utility patent. Okay. Which covers software and such, which is basically kind of the underlying aspect of what the peer-to-peer system is with Veritaseum, if I understand that correctly.
Advanced than that, but software is a component.
Okay. And then as a person who is granted the patent, you have the right to exclude, and then you have the right to sue infringers, or you can allow individuals to use a patent license via a patent license agreement. So is Reggie Middleton looking to take down crypto? Are you looking to take down DeFi? I'm curious, because I know a lot of people, I know kind of where your head is at, but in the sense of this interview, what is your goals with being the holder of this patent, which does seem to be one of the most significant patents, one of the most significant pieces of paper in the cryptocurrency space, maybe even above the Satoshi white paper? So what is your ultimate end goal with this?
Okay, so when you ask that question, again, I'm going to take a step back. I'm going to try and normalize the question to make sure that it is applied in an environment that everybody else lives in. Yeah. I was looking up Square. Square, I think, has roughly 600 something patent applications. They've been granted well over 100 patents. Okay. Has anybody asked Square what their goal is in filing several hundred patent applications and getting granted 100 and change? I don't think so. Coinbase? Yes. The Gemini and the Winklevoss twins. And I could go down the line.
Right.
consensus, members of the Ethereum Foundation. So for whatever reason, this patent makes everybody ask what my goal is. And I have much less in terms of actual granted patents and applications than many of the heavier weights or the well-funded entities in the industry. So it begs the question, what is the difference between Reggie Middleton getting a patent and A, B, C, D, X, Y, and Z? Because these questions are not being asked, but I have no problem answering it. My goal from the very, very beginning was to create an equitable democracy and access. I don't believe in creating a socialist environment where everybody's considered of equal capability and everybody gets the exact same amount of capital. I do want to create an equitable, meritorious environment where everybody has access, the same access. With the same access, the more capable rise and less capable fall. Okay, that's currently not the case because we have barriers to success. Political barriers, geopolitical barriers, financial barriers, economic barriers, etc. Okay, by using this technology that, a 9-year-old girl in Rwanda can outtrade that, 45-year-old PhD on a Goldman Sachs prop desk once it comes to commodity trades, because her family's been in it for 8 generations. She's been living and breathing it since she was able to walk, and she's just that much better. But she would never get the same access. Through my technology and system, everybody has access at the same rate, etc. Now, that does rankle the feathers of many, and those whose feathers are rankled, I can understand them coming at me like that. But realize who they are and why they're coming after me. The same reason why those entities would come after me is the reason why the vast majority in the crypto space should be lauding this and be very, very happy and supportive of it. Do I want to take down the crypto industry? Why would I do such a thing? I have been working hard. I've been suffering ups and downs, attacked by my government. In the detail, I had all of my corporate and my personal assets taken from me. Name that took 20, 30, 3 decades to build, proof by a press release.
Yeah.
The press release, etc. So I'm going to go through all that to take down what I actually fought for decades to build. Of course not. I suggest anybody who's interested in doing business with me, contact me. Okay. As long as you're not a direct competitor to me, there's absolutely no threat. If you're a direct competitor to me, then it's the same competitive threat that any other competitor would have. There's nothing different. So let's suppose you're running your business. You have your own website. Do you have your own website or web property by any chance?
I do have a website.
Okay. So let's suppose you have it hosted at AWS. Are you concerned that AWS is going to put you out of business?
It is a point of failure.
Okay. But do you think they will put you out of business?
Not if I was just doing normal business. No, I wouldn't see any reason.
Right. Well, not if you pay them the fee to use their property. They have property, which is a server farm, which you are using to host your website, okay, in which you pay a fee. You pay the fee because you're using their property. Nobody says, well, is Amazon going to destroy the media business, or are they going to put Rice out of business? Of course not. He's using their property for us, for commercial gain. He's paying them for it, and everything is hunky-dory. So property is property. Intellectual property is the same as real property, assuming that you have a house or you rent property. If you're in an apartment, you rent an apartment, you pay a rent through a lease. Are you afraid your landlord's going to put you out of business? No, you're in his property, you're using it, you're paying a monthly fee.
Right.
For some reason, people go gaga if the property goes from typical business property, personal property, or real property, and goes to intellectual property. Now everybody loses their mind. If something belongs to me and someone else is using it for commercial gain, there's absolutely nothing wrong with me asking them to pay me for the use of my property.
Right. So that's ultimately what your intention is to basically work out a deal where there would be a patent license agreement and they would just pay you for utilizing your IP.
It goes further than that. It appears that I have a different way of looking at things. So I come up with what could be very innovative ideas 5, 6 years, a decade before, the industry does. Many people could take advantage of this, many entities, particularly if you have a strong development for staff. Here's an example. I'm not saying I'm going to do this, but here's a perfect example. The dominant blockchain in the industry right now would be who?
I would say Ethereum based off of activity.
Okay, Ethereum. Who's the second most dominant?
Bitcoin.
Excuse me?
Bitcoin.
Okay. I don't think Bitcoin has much commercial activity.
Yeah, no, you're right. You're right. Maybe, possibly even the XRP ledger, or even right now, unfortunately, a Solana or a Binance Smart Chain.
Okay, so let's take second, third, and fourth. Okay, so you have Ethereum number one. You have the RippleNet, Binance, Solana. Okay, they compete with Ethereum. I go to now many financial transactions. A lot of the Uniswaps and the banking financial, and then the big banks, Citibank, JP Morgan, etc. I believe they infringe in some form or fashion. That's my belief. Okay, I'm not an intellectual property attorney. I'm not a software developer. I'm not an engineer. But I think I'm pretty good at reading. Okay.
Okay.
I go to Solana and I say, oh, I go to Binance Smart Chain. Okay, who were probably infringing as well, but that's not really relevant. I say, if you license our technology at the protocol level, okay, anybody who uses your blockchain is now licensed. It's built in. That gives you an extreme advantage over Ethereum. An extreme advantage. So that means all the big banks can use the Binance Smart Chain, assuming they don't have any technological reasons not to, such as whatever centralization, security, etc. Assuming all of that is ironed out. Using the Binance Smart Chain with the embedded inherent license gives it an extreme advantage to Ethereum. Because theoretically, anybody using Ethereum, if Ethereum was infringing, can get a tap on the shoulder by one of the Veritaseum properties. Same thing with Solana, etc.
What about users? Can users, like the average citizen, do they fall underneath of this as well?
I think technically they will use an infringing product, but that's irrelevant because nobody, with their right mind will bother with users. The key is you don't want anybody profiting off of your work and your property.
Okay.
Users are profiting off it, they're using it. So if you invented the car, okay, and people are driving cars, you're not going to chase around and sue people. But if Ford or Tesla took your invention and then started selling it and made $3 billion off of it this year, and you're sitting there starving because you spent all your money developing this new electric car technology, you would take issue with that. You say, Tesla, you're using my property. I would like for you to pay for it. But you would not, you wouldn't bother anybody who's driving a Tesla car because they're not the ones who cause the problem. Tesla, who's commercializing and profiting from your invention, is what causes the problem for you.
So pretty much most
legalities, I just want you to look at it from a common sense, ethical perspective.
Okay, and I appreciate you giving that. So basically, what you've been kind of explaining to me is just basically protecting your IP, your patent. So how do you enforce when it comes to the enforcement end? How are you attempting to enforce this patent when it comes to a patent license agreement, or if you don't come to any terms and just excluding them from being able to utilize your IP?
Well, we haven't come to a point of enforcing yet. It's just discussions. Nobody wins in litigation. Nobody does. There's this, and the last thing I ever want to do is litigate. So part and parcel with the license is access to the new ideas that we're coming up with and the ability to license that. To show you how valuable that would be, not to pat myself on the shoulder because I tore my rotator cuff, but I would if it didn't hurt. To give you an example, let's look at the swaps. Right about the time that I did an ICO in 2017, a company, I think they're based in Israel, did an ICO. Their name was Bancor. And they came up with automated pricing algorithm that prices for liquidity on the fly. They raised a lot of money. Adoption Adoption was, I think, mediocre to average. And a young guy out of New York in Brooklyn saw that, and he attempted to approve on it because they were open source. This was 2017 when they came up with it. In 2017 or 2018, 2019, I'm not sure the actual year, he forked Bancor. He did some improvements to it with allegedly a $100,000 grant from Consensus, and then he launched Uniswap, okay, which pretty much did the same thing. This company called SushiSwap saw that Uniswap was doing very well, and they forked Uniswap. Mm-hmm. Made a couple of changes to the incentive mechanisms to liquidity providers, and they took half of Uniswap's liquidity providers. And then another company, Binance or PancakeSwap, funded by Binance, saw what SushiSwap was doing. They forked SushiSwap, made some changes, ported it over to the Binance Smart Chain. They're doing very, very well. This all started roughly 2017. The concept that we came up with was in 2013, patented in 2014. So we'll take the lowest common denominator. You would have been a minimum of 5 years ahead of this curve, or 4 years ahead of the curve if you work with us. So would it benefit any of these swap entities, or would it benefit any bank or any other project to be 4 years ahead of the closest competitor?
Oh, it would.
And potentially even protect it through patent rights. That's what I'm offering. You get much more than just a patent license. You get access to our creativity and brains. On the financial side, we're very, very strong. You can look us up. You know, we've had calls that, you know, outran the biggest providers in the world.
Well, there is the argument, I guess, excuse me, amongst kind of the cyberpunk type mentality, early crypto people that, you know, with open source technology, you don't patent it. But when you talk about all these other different entities, especially of the legacy system, because you didn't mention like Bank of America. Bank of America, I think, holds more blockchain and crypto patents than any other entity. And then holding a patent also allows them to prevent others from being able to utilize that technology, even if they don't have any intention of doing anything with the patent. So it kind of protects them from having competition in other elements. So you doing it, it wasn't a way for you to, I would much rather someone like yourself than someone like JP Morgan or Bank of America have a patent like this, where you're working with the industry, just wanting to make sure that you're being compensated with a patent license agreement.
Well, I want to keep this very, very factual. I'm very familiar with the argument and the mindset of the cypherpunks. But for those who want to scream patent troll, we can always compare. I coded our first software swap on the blockchain in 2013. So anybody who came after that is technically the troll themselves, not me. Okay? I don't think anybody's done it pre-2013. Number two, open source software is useful and good and profitable unless you get paid for selling software.
Right.
Software, you bankrupted yourself before you got started. Nobody can make money selling something that the competitor's giving away for free. It's absolutely impossible. Now, there are companies with successful business models based upon open source software, but you have to look at it critically and realize they're not selling open source software. They're selling something else. Example is Google. Okay, Google has some open source projects, but they're selling people using the projects, not the actual software itself. Things that Google actually, Android's a perfect example. You know, I'm using an Android operating system right now. Android is free. It's open source. The AOSP, that's an Android open source program, I think. But the critical components that gives most of the functionality outside of the base OS is closed source, such as Google Play Store and Gmail, et cetera, et cetera. Let's go back to the story that I told you based upon Bancor. Bancor open sourced their idea. Their idea infringed on my patent, actually. Okay. But Bancor came up with an idea that was infringing. They open sourced it. Because it was open source, somebody copied it and made Uniswap. Right? And because Uniswap was open source, somebody copied it and made SushiSwap. Because SushiSwap was open source, somebody copied it and made PancakeSwap. What did Uniswap do? Okay, Uniswap changed the licensure on their code and enforced copyright and said that it can't be used for commercial purposes within the 1.5 to 2 years after release. So you had the biggest swap entity at that time, and they went against the cypherpunk mentality. Why? Because cypherpunks aren't business people. So if you're going to go in and do business, you need to do business with prudent business practices. Curve Finance is another example of an open source entity that wants to enforce their copyright and their license. And for valid reason, because competitors were just taking the code and forking it. You come up with a smart idea, you bust your butt day and night, you raise $20, $30 million worth of VC funds, you develop something, your competitor just sits there and waits. And once it's developed, fork. Now, 2 years of life, 2 years of your team's life, $20 million down the drain. That is not business. Okay. So that's why the country has patents. Without a patent, I would have been taken out by the government and bowled over by large entities who could care less about giving democratized access. But because of the patents, my ideas now belong to me. So I have rights.
I didn't know that about Uniswap. It makes sense, especially when you're seeing your ideas being taken right as soon as you're putting stuff out, because it's open source and somebody can literally just take and fork it. So that makes a lot of sense. So I understand with wanting to protect your IP. And then before we even started recording, one thing that you said that I really want to highlight is the fact that your goal with all of this is to keep the industry moving forward,
right?
Which is obviously a positive statement.
At a rapid clip. It stagnates, it goes off in the wrong direction. And I'm not the industry steward, I'm not the industry's dad, but at least where my ideas come into play, I wanted to move very quickly. When large centralized entities or commercial entities, and that's not say centralized, get a hold of something, oftentimes they will optimize short-term profits over a long-term value creation. And understandably so, because they answer quarterly to investors. I don't. I answer to an idea of making the world a better place. As corny as that may sound, that's what I want to do. It's my property, and I'll use it to do that. If you don't like it, then we go off in a different direction. But I honestly do want to make the world egalitarian in terms of access.
Okay.
I want to take money and redistribute it. I want to take opportunity and redistribute it.
I like that. That's a good way of putting it. Why do you think? Because what you're explaining to me, it does sound really important. You having an aboriginal patent on DeFi and everything that DeFi represents, everything that you kind of.
It's actually on P2P Capital Markets, of which DeFi is a small subset. But I say DeFi because if I say P2P Capital Markets, they're like, what?
Right. So an aboriginal peer-to-peer capital patent is what you have. Capital utility patent. Okay. Why do you think, one, no mainstream news sources are covering this with as big as DeFi is, and as much as mainstream news sources do cover decentralized finance? And two, why isn't the cryptocurrency media space covering this?
Well, I'm going to see if I can get you to walk through it. But let's start with a premise, an assumption. I'm not saying this is the case. Let's just make a hypothetical. Let's assume Ethereum infringes on a patent. Let's assume Ripple's primary product infringes on a patent. Let's assume that Bitcoin's most utilitarian aspect infringes on a patent. Make these three assumptions, okay, as a hypothetical. Who is the largest industry rag in the crypto space?
CoinDesk or Cointelegraph, which they're both owned by the same entities, basically.
Okay, what entities own them?
What's that?
What entities own them?
Digital Currency Group.
Okay. Does Digital Currency Group own anything else in the space?
Yes.
Give me a quick list.
I can't tell you an exact quick list, but I know that they were a big investor, and Blockstream was one of the projects that they helped fund.
Okay. So you have Blockstream.
Solana, I believe, is under their umbrella.
Blockstream, Solana. They also have a asset management group, Grayscale.
Oh, Grayscale is theirs.
Okay, yeah. And they also are large private investors in many other projects and entities.
Right.
If CoinDesk was not solely a media concern, but had owners that had fingers in a bunch of other pots, then it's all hypothetical. Okay, not pointing fingers. And they ran a story on this patent, and everybody was aware that there's all these potential infringers on a patent. Would that help Grayscale? Would that help Solana, Uniswap, or would it hurt them?
It would possibly hurt them.
Okay. Now, as I explained how I plan to go about business, it actually would help them because I would try to bring everybody forward at a more rapid clip. But if you're thinking old school, where he has a patent, he comes with a club, he hits me over the head with lawyers, which I don't, I'm not thinking that way. I'm thinking in a much more progressive perspective. But if you thought that, instead of running it on a news site, like a actual, true, pure media concern, you would run it more as a marketing site for your other properties. Again, wholly hypothetical. So once you have notice of the patent, then you have to admit that you knew it existed. Okay. So if Grayscale had to ask me for permission to create an Ethereum fund, they're at a disadvantage. So one way to prevent that is, or at least attempt to prevent it, would be to hide it.
Right.
Now I'm not saying that's the case. Everything's a hypothetical, but it does seem rather counterintuitive that the biggest news that I've seen since I started in the industry in 2013 hasn't received one peep out of the biggest media concern or the second biggest or anybody else.
No, actually, the reason I found out about it, as sad as it is, and you are a contributing writer with ZeroHedge, but it was your article that you wrote about this that brought this to my attention. That's when I was doing a Crypto Rewind with CryptoBlood as one of the guests. And that's when I brought it to his attention for the first time. And then he got you on the show and then here we are. But yeah, I mean, and I think that what you said hypothetically makes all the sense in the world. And that's kind of been what I was kind of thinking more than anything. But I just wanted to hear it from you directly as far as what you thought.
Well, here are two more thoughts. Number one, CoinDesk, if you're listening, and I'm absolutely wrong, which hypotheticals, because not really me, I'm just running hypotheticals. You could put the hypothetical to rest, put this on front page. It doesn't happen well. But guess who did me an extreme favor? Take a guess.
The United States and Japanese governments by granting you this patent?
Well, trust me, those were favors. I fought for that. Years getting these approved. That was not a walk in the park.
Okay.
6 years of intense prosecution. Nobody can ever say this stuff was given to me freely. And the last thing you recall is a favor. Okay. It's an extreme fight. And, eventually one of us tapped out. Okay. By hiding the patent and making sure that nobody's aware of it, all you do is propagate the technology deeper and deeper and deeper into the industry and deeper into the business model. And to the point where it's so deep, it can't be extricated. You want to engineer around it, you have to rewrite entire blockchains, entire business models, and application for the algorithm. If that was the intent by keeping it quiet, kudos, you succeeded. Okay. Now, I think I changed and transformed the way capital is transferred or value is transferred. And I would love to change the way patents are used and utilized. He's going to destroy the industry and, fight and conflict, blah, blah, blah. It's ridiculous. Okay. Take use of the ideas and the creativity that my team and I have and use them and simply pay for it.
Right.
You cannot pay for it up front. You could work something out. I am very, very, very flexible. The only thing I will ever really have a problem with is unethical use or trying to steal them.
Well,
the sky's open.
So I've got maybe 3 more questions, but are there any entities, you don't have to mention names, but any entities that you wouldn't even want to grant a license agreement to and just exclude them, period?
I do have a personal beef with one very large, powerful entity because I felt that they're extremely unethical and they did a large amount of damage to my family, myself, and everybody else. But I will not opine. I will not even discuss it because lawyers are like, you out of your mind, right? So
no, I get you, man. Now let's say in theory, someone that you approach doesn't take what you're saying seriously and doesn't feel the necessity to do a patent license agreement with you and just is dismissing you. How do you enforce that?
Well, if we choose to enforce it, if we choose that it's worth the trouble, then we simply drag them to court. Most people don't understand what a patent is. A patent is the right to sue somebody. Okay, it's not a guarantee of anything. It's just the right to sue somebody. It says you own this property. Okay, so if someone misuses this property without your consent, you will have the right to sue them. Think of intellectual property as real property because people understand real property well. You have a house. Okay, you and your family live in a house. I come in, I bust down the door, I move in with 2 of my children, 3 of my homeboys, and about 15 strangers. I'm renting rooms out of your house out to everybody at market rate, making good money. You say, I don't want you in my house, or if I allow you to stay here, I need you to pay rent. I say no. In certain areas, that will result in a different type of conflict, but we're going to keep this legal, okay? From a legal perspective, you drag me to court and you say this guy, broke into my house and he's using my property against my will and he's benefiting from it, charging rent. And then you litigate it. Hopefully the judge says you have to pay him all back rent and you have to get out if he wants you to get out. Property is property. Real property, intellectual property, personal property, business assets is property.
That's a great way of explaining it, which I appreciate. Now I'm going to be following this and obviously seeing what's taking place. And I'm going to be doing a little bit more research in regards to the SEC case. So when people, they may be unfamiliar, and in the first interview that we do was kind of before the SEC case, but it was August 12th of 2019 that the SEC was filing charges against you and Veritaseum. And that was resolved with the final judgment on November 1st, 2019. So I will be doing a completely separate show in the future, diving into that a little bit more. But speaking of Veritaseum and Veri, how does all of this that we just spoke about possibly affect what the Veritaseum company, blockchain, and token? What kind of effects could this have?
Yeah. That's a compound question. So you folded 3 or 4 questions into one.
Yeah, I know. I did.
Put them apart and do them one at a time.
Okay.
I'll just give you a quick overview. The SEC's aggressive litigious actions, and my consequent settlement agreement, which is less of an agreement, more of a, I had to bend over basically. It destroyed the value of the Veri token and the relationship between the Veri token and the Veri token issuer, Veritaseum. It's destroyed.
Now, to be fair, I wasn't rolling that question into the other questions.
Okay.
I was making a statement about the Veritaseum and SEC case just to talk about that. I will be bringing it up in a future episode. But more so, how does this currently, the fact that you hold this patent, how does this affect Veritaseum and the Veri token?
I'm going to get to that. I have to give a back. Okay. So as of right now, the Veri token has no use case and is useless because the entity that gave it value and utility was sued, was essentially de facto bankrupted and put out of business. Okay. And that's in the contracts that were, so allegedly agreed to by anybody who bought the token from Veritaseum. I am grateful for the support that the vast majority of the Veri community has given me. And even though the damage was done by outside forces through no fault of my own, I believe we executed and delivered either on time or early for every milestone that we had. And each milestone was a first in the industry. I am strongly considering, not guaranteeing, because You know, if there's an issue of affordability, there's an issue of more aggression by regulators, a lack of transparency, opacity, etc., ambiguity. But I'm strongly considering allowing the very token to discount licensure of the IP. So if you want to license the IP and you pay 10% in very token, you can get, say, a 15% discount, as an example, another hypothetical. That gives or returns some of the value, or maybe even more than some of the value in terms of use case and utility to the very tokens. I am under absolutely, as far as I know, and I understand, I'm under absolutely no legal obligation or contractual obligation to do so. And I'm not creating or attempting to create or plan to create any legal obligation or contractual obligation to do so. I want to make that very clear. Now, a lot of people are in total befuddlement, like, why would you do it? Which is a shame. I'll do it because I think it's the right thing to do. That's the reason, you know, and it's unfortunate that, you know, people have to, you know, go through the rigmarole. As long as I can afford it, and it doesn't get me any trouble, I will do what I can. I'm not going to capsize the business or my family, but I will do what I can. Okay, and I think I'm pretty capable.
I would agree, and you know, I mean, you've been the SEC case. I mean, just from my perspective, with you know, from what I've looked at with my research and insight, it doesn't seem like it was a very clean case. And I'm not a very big proponent of our government, of the SEC. So I'm going to be, like I said, I'm going to be doing a little bit more research into this so that I can expound upon what took place during that case, because I know some of it you really can't talk about, which I respect. But I'm going to be talking to people in the community. So if you're watching this as a very holder and you had any issues or you have anything to share with me in regards to the SEC case, you can always email me or contact me on Telegram, and my information is below in the video description. So I would definitely encourage people to reach out, because as far as I'm concerned, Reggie, it looked like you were being very compliant with the SEC before this case came about. It looked like you were trying to play ball. You looked like you were trying to do everything to be underneath the regulatory compliance, which really wasn't even spelled out. And then somewhere down the line, SEC just decided to call you a fraud and say that this was a securities violation. And for one individual to fight the SEC, I'm sure it breaks somebody financially. I mean, I've seen what happens with companies that are dealing with the SEC. So, I mean, if you don't have the funds to fight it, sometimes you have to just take an agreement, like kind of in the situation that you did, which is why I would like to, in the future, expound upon that a little bit more. But Reggie, I appreciate your time. I want to be respectful because we're at 45 minutes. Was there anything that I didn't ask or anything that you would like to include as final thoughts for today's interview?
No, there are other things, but I will probably be best served not discussing it at this time.
Okay.
There will be, there is one thing. I am reinstituting Boom Bust blog research with the Veritaseum research added in, and we're going to go over interesting topics. In the pipeline, we're looking at Block. We'll be looking at Meta, Coinbase on the public side. We're also looking at private companies such as Ripple, Kraken, a lot of exchanges. It's going to be very interesting. If you want examples of what our research looks like, you can Google, is this the breaking of the bear on boombustblog.com. That was the prediction of Bear Stearns collapse. GGP, which is a prediction of the collapse of the second largest mall commercial REIT in the country. They filed bankruptcy. And even a crypto company, Hex, which is on a Veritaseum site under research. Totally different animal. So our stuff is significant. And of course, there will be a lot of IP, valuation, forensic analysis, everything in there. It's going to be stuff that's not available from Goldman or Citibank or any of the crypto-specific research arms. Totally original and extremely informative, and I think quite predictive.
Very cool. I'll have to make sure I include links down below. I mean, I know before, it might have even been before cryptocurrencies. I mean, you were in the financial markets making predictions and analysis. The financial Nostradamus.
Yeah, you predict almost all the major booms and busts since 2006. The housing market crash, the commercial market, the European debt crisis, Lehman Brothers, Bear Stearns, General Growth Properties, Android, Google, Apple overvalued, Facebook overvalued, about 86 to 93 altogether, including Bitcoin and Ethereum, and maybe even Veritaseum.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, I'm definitely looking forward to that. I mean, you have some great insight. And, you know, keep me up to date with everything that's happening in regards to the patent. And if you ever want to come back on the show, you always have an open invite.
Okay, will do. I appreciate your even-keeled, bilateral perspective to things, you know, looking at both sides. You know, the one-sided agenda only, you know, style of media reporting is great. Everybody has a perspective, well biased. As long as you state it up front, it's cool. But, you know, trying to state your opinion as objective fact is offensive to me. So I appreciate the way you go about things.
No, and I appreciate you, and thank you for taking the time to say that. I mean, there's a whole lot more that we could have like tried to dig deeper in, but not having a great knowledge of international patent law. I mean, I know that you could, when we're talking about clients that would be infringing upon like your IP protocol, like it could even go down into like the level of the banks that are utilizing the underlying technologies as well. So this is a lot deeper of a web than people actually realize. I'm just trying to give some surface information in regards to what your objective goal is when it comes to not only protecting, but defending your IP and giving people that insight.
Let's put that in perspective from a monetary approach. The money center banks are by far the largest infringers in the bank. You know, the Uniswaps and Ripples, and that's this much, and the banks are this entire room.
Right.
Okay, so, and there, in my opinion, again, this is my personal opinion, another disclaimer, I'm not a patent attorney, I'm not a developer, just a dad that is entrepreneurial. But my dad, who's entrepreneurial, opinion is, you know, infringement is rampant. Remember, I was awarded the patent first October 2020. From October 2020 to today, we've been doing research and studying infringement. And before then, you know, we actually wrote the patent, came up with that idea on the Inventor, etc. So for a year and 4 months, 3 months, nothing but research, the whole team. So I'm very aware of what's going on in the world, who I feel is infringing and how. You know, multiple reports already written, claims tables, analysis down to specific lines of code.
And I know there's some information that you can't share publicly because all of, like you said, the Japanese patent took place in October 2020, and then it was December of 2021 that the United States granted you the patent, and we're really at like a month later. So obviously you're just now starting to get into the position where you're going to be contacting these entities and trying to work out some sort of patent license agreement and kind of go from there. So I mean, I'm definitely going to be keeping my eyes on things, and I appreciate you again taking the time. If you can bear with me 1 second, just going to wrap up things and stop recording.
Okay, and also this might be helpful. It's going to be in our pay attention to quarterly reports coming out next month or this month, and you will see some evidence of potential risk from patent infringement. Not necessarily for me. I'm not the only entrepreneur who wrote patents. There's plenty of others. And I'm aware of several others who approached some big and powerful entities in the industry looking to assert their patent rights. So it's going to be an interesting year of David versus Goliath.
Okay? Interesting.
And I'm going to make it not David versus Goliath, but David versus Goliath.
It's a good way of putting it.
I'll try to, at least I can play both sides of the fence, but I will try to.
Right. Oh, I'm definitely going to be paying attention to this and see what's coming out of it. So again, thanks for your time. Ladies and gentlemen, this is your first chance or first time ever watching any of my content. Be sure to check out and explore my channel. If you already watch, make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell. Going to have links down below for the Rice Rewind episode with the first interview with Reggie Middleton from World Alternative Media. So make sure you check that out, as well as all the links for everything we talked about, including the patent information, so that you can explore and do a deeper dive. As always, I encourage you to be the change by practicing change.